I think there are like a lot of threads to unravel here about who Taylor Swift, the character, is in her relationships.
All three of these songs are totally different productionally. They're all from totally different eras of her career. And yet, of course, this is sister songs, so they all have one thing in common.
I was not expecting to hear those three words.
Well, I did the whole discography. I had to include
You
it.
went in. She went in.
I went in.
Welcome back to Evolution of a Snake. I'm Zach.
And I am Madeline.
And today we are back with another famous, hallowed installment of Sister Songs, where we take two songs from Taylor Swift's vast and varied discography, two, maybe more. We have a third one in the chat this week. And we compare them based on, similarities that we find, differences in character development and growth that we identify. Last time, what did we do? We did The Alchemy, and we
don't even know.
We don't know.
The Alchemy. I really don't know. The Alchemy. Torture Poets Department.
Nope.
The song? No, we don't know.
I don't think so.
You guys know. You guys know more than we did.
This is what happens. We get on the mic and suddenly the spirit of Taylor Swift lyrics overcomes us and we speak in tongues and then it's over. So that's what you're in for today. Today we are going to be talking about The Bolter, Getaway Car. That was a huge request, by the way. Those two songs have been a huge request ever since we started this series. But we also put a little blue in our hair for the Teen Vogue party and we added in Midnight Rain. And I'm sure none of you are surprised as to why that fits into this group. Before we get into today's video, we have to remind you that Evolution of a Snake is going on tour. We're going to New York City. We're going to Boston. We're going to DC. We're going to LA. We're going to San Francisco. We're going to Seattle. We're going to Nashville, Atlanta, Madison, Wisconsin, and somewhere else that I forgot. Chicago?
Seattle?
Chicago?
Seattle.
There you go. I mean, the thing is that all you have to do is go to evolutionofasnake.com to see all the tour dates and get your tickets. Low ticket warnings for New York City. We have released a limited number of comp tickets for DC because demand sold out. And LA, also sold out. So if you want to come to see the Snakes on tour, we would love to see you. Woohoo! It's coming up soon, Madeline. It's coming up
sooner than you realize, ladies and gentlemen. Sooner than I realize, as a matter of fact, but we don't have to get into all that.
We don't have to get into all that.
We don't have to get into all that.
So do you want to start, Madeline?
I would absolutely love to start. Thank you, Zach. And over to you, Madeline. Kind of like around.
And now we're going to have a weather report from Madeline.
So, Getaway Car, Midnight Rain, and The Bolter. All three of these songs are totally different productionally. They're all from totally different eras of her career. And yet, of course, this is sister songs, so they all have one thing in common. And that is, of course, the theme of running for the hills. But what's interesting is that they're all about leaving for different reasons. So in Getaway Car, she's bolting because she was never meant to be there in the first place and was sort of using the situation to escape another. That's not the start of any fantastic love story, ladies and gentlemen. And then in Midnight Rain, she's leaving because she doesn't feel like she belongs in this person's life or in his world. She feels like an outlier and like she just doesn't fit because they both want different things. I mean, he wanted a bride. She was making her own name. Ever heard of it? And then in The Bolter, she's leaving because whenever someone gets too close, it seems to freak her out for reasons that we can speculate upon. But I kind of think that the reasoning gives kind of like wildest dreams in the sense that she knows it's all going to explode anyway. So to me, the unspoken theme of The Bolter is you got to leave before you get left. Ever heard of it before? Reputation, Taylor, we thank you. But I do still consider them to all be about the exact same kind of leaving, even if they all happen or happened for different reasons. And I think The Bolter says it best. It's all legitimately about bolting. But there's a big difference between leaving and bolting. I'll tell you that for free.
So true, Queen. So true. I think there are like a lot of threads to unravel here about who Taylor Swift, the character, is in her relationships. And I like that you make the distinction between leaving and bolting because they are completely separate phenomenons in this discography. I think in Getaway Car, she presents her abandonment, her bolting, as something that was like obvious and natural even to the person that she was with and should have been expected. She's not really feeling culpable or sorry about the fact that she had to get in the getaway car because according to her, it was clear from the start. On The Bolter, I think she expands on that thought because in Getaway Car, I guess you could say that she comes across a little detached, maybe even a little cruel, perhaps, because she's saying, you should have known. Even though I was tricking you, even though I was being duplicitous, still, you should have known that I wasn't in the space to be doing this. And then on the Bolter, I think she really expands on that train of thought and describes it as bolting, as something that she needs, something that makes her feel alive, something that makes her feel like she's breathing. And she kind of extrapolates a little bit more on why leaving when it's good is the thing to do, because it makes her feel alive.
Precisely. Exactly. So I kind of broke down all of the songs that Taylor has about leaving, whether she's the one who's being left or she's the one who's leaving, and I categorize them. So the first category that I have is getting left, which pretty much means that they dumped her. So that is the opposite of the Bolter behavior. A couple of examples.
Half of the discography.
Yeah, half of the discography. Just a couple of examples. I have Mr. Perfectly Fine. I have All Too Well. I have Death by a Thousand Cuts. I have Hits Different. We could go on and on and on. And then the second one that I have is Fate, where it just couldn't work out because of extenuating circumstances or because of a right person, wrong time situation. And what's interesting about the Fate one is that she doesn't really start talking about this specific kind of like losing someone until 1989. After I think, of course, another few instances made her a little bit jaded. From Debut to Speak Now, when she's talking about Fate, she's talking about Mary's Song. She's talking about Timeless. We would have been fine. We would have been timeless, ladies and gentlemen. That's what she's talking about. And then all of a sudden on 1989, she's doing Wildest Dreams, which was a pretty hard pivot. That's why I was so obsessed with it, because she had never had a song like it before, and she had never said anything like
in
that
her
before.
Lana Del Rey ripoff bag,
exactly.
as she should.
And as she should be, and I'm still clapping, I'm still cheering today. So Wildest Dreams, The One, 'Tis the Damn Season, and I also have Chloe or Sam or Sophia or Marcus in that category as well. And that's a whole nother kit and caboodle. But the number 3 category is You've Left Me No Choice. I would have stayed if it hadn't been for XYZ. This is actually the most popular one I discovered. I have like a straight up paragraph, song after song after song. It's kind of like, another way that you can think of it is, this is your fault. Is another way to put it.
So Long London.
So Long London. I have Chloe or Sam in this one as well. Chloe or Sam goes in different areas. Cardigan, We Are Never Ever Getting Back Together, Tell Me Why, You're Not Sorry, The Way I Loved You, Dear John, Better Man, Babe, blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on. And then last but not least, what we're talking about today is the bolting. This is actually a very short list. So I have We Were Happy, which is made up, so it barely even matters. And then
I was not expecting to hear those 3 words.
Well, I did the whole discography. I had to include it.
You went in. She went in.
I went in. And then Back to December, Getaway Car, Cornelia Street, because it features an attempted bolt. It failed, but she tried to run for the hills through the tunnel, ladies and gentlemen. Champagne Problems, Midnight Rain. I put It's Time to Go, but it's
absolutely.
kind of...
I was thinking about that when I was doing the analysis, because when it's time to go is kind of the whole thesis of the Bolter anyway.
And then I put High Infidelity, and then I put the Bolter. Now, the tea is, when I had it all lined up like this, I had all the data. The tea is, Taylor really doesn't bolt that much, especially not as compared to how often she either leaves after holding on for way too long, or is left with absolutely no choice but to leave, or just winds up being the one who's left. Hence why she starts to believe later on in Rep Era that you got to leave before you get left. She's actually a lot more prone to waiting, specifically for someone to change, for someone to get their act together, for them to come back.
Martyrdom, suffering.
Exactly. Coming with the rain, she's waiting. Forever and Always, she's waiting. Foolish One, I Wish You Would, Say Don't Go, Right Where You Left Me, on and on and on. Even in songs where she ultimately winds up leaving, like in So Long London, so much of So Long London is about waiting. Even in You're Losing Me, it's about waiting. I'm sick. I have storms in my eyes.
That was not a bolt. That was not
a bolt. So even though she has...
It was no surprise.
Yeah, it was not. It was absolutely not a surprise. But even though she has bolted a couple of times, which, by the way, who hasn't? I don't really consider it to be a personality trait or something that defines her. And I wouldn't describe her as a bolter, because you don't stay in a 6-year-long relationship where you're on your hands and knees begging him to marry you because you're, quote unquote, the bolter. So I think...
Speak. Yeah, it's an interesting thesis you have, because I think that it is the part of her that's all of me changed like Midnight Rain. It might not be something that she acts on frequently, but I think it is a very core and essential part of her to bolt. I think that there are examples of this going throughout. And maybe I can just start spitting on where I found this. Interesting point to kind of shift perspective a little bit, because I think I came up with kind of the opposite idea of you. But I think also was looking at the discography and I felt there were definitely similarities here to earlier songs. And when we look at the earlier works, she's so focused on right and wrong in a relationship. Our narrator really, she takes comfort in the fact that there are rules to love. It's a ruthless game unless we play it good and right, which at a certain point she thinks is possible. Fairy tales appeal because, they offer what real life doesn't and what she craves: predictability and moral certainty. We know she's a control freak, and romance is the one area of her life in which she has very little control, hence her fascination with it. So in like the fairy tales, every action has a consequence, every ending has a meaning, and the universe just feels, even if the outcome is tragic, like it makes sense. Romeo and Juliet, for example, generational feud. Story closes with emotional clarity. There's comfort in knowing that pain leads to purpose, choices are narratively justified, and ultimately, chaotic things have a meaning and a purpose.
Right.
And reality seldom promises this. It does not give this to you.
Right.
But even though she's drawn at this early time in her career to the moral structure of the fairy tale, she has this belief that it can be tinkered with, that she can change fate. Hello, she changes the ending in Love Story. And she has two, what I would say are competing desires in the earlier work. One, for everything to make sense. And two, to find the excitement and the aliveness of the Bolter in the unpredictable. And those two things don't go together, which is what makes it such an interesting tension. I mean, she expands on this in The Way I Loved You. He is sensible and so incredible, and all my single friends are jealous. But ultimately, I miss screaming and fighting and kissing in the rain. And perhaps that's what bolting is. It's not necessarily always leaving someone. It's dramatically changing up your life just for the sake of it, for the plot. She loves the drama, the peril, the adventure. And I think we can see that throughout her discography, she's trying to make sense of, is there a rhyme or reason for why matters of the heart just keep blowing up in my face? And I think we do see glimmers of bolting in her earlier work, even when she was very focused on fairy tales. So Back to December, great example. She around and found out basically she chose the screaming and the fighting and the kissing in the rain over the sensible guy, and she came back around to regretting it. But she is apologizing to this boy, whoever he may be, Taylor Lautner doing backflips, on Back to December. And I think she is also kind of warning herself that actions have consequences. I don't get the sense here that she loves him and wants to get back together with him. My perception of it now is that she's almost like scolding herself for making the wrong choice and for leaning into her bolting impulse. And I think that gray area continues into Red with treacherous. This path is treacherous. I know this is going to end bad, but I like it. She's being led by her desire and her instincts rather than like being in the need to control the narrative. There's something very intoxicating about the possibility that her heart might explode if she makes the wrong move. And then I think she pushes away that feeling for a few more albums. So in 1989, we're definitely back in the love story territory. She has lessons to share from her heartbreak, like complete conclusions. She lost him, she found herself, but somehow that was everything. Case closed. Case closed. The record literally ends with Clean, which is one of the most, we love Clean, but it is one of the most like forced closure moments, I think, in her career. It's what Daylight wanted to be.
Wow. Now, wait a second. Now, hold on. Wait, not forced closure. Not forced closure.
Well, because was she really over it? When we look into the full picture with the Taylor's versions, now I see why you left Now That We Don't Talk, and Is It Over Now off the record. I see. They aren't neat conclusions. They don't contribute to this picture of Taylor as being moved on. The only song that kind of leaves room for regret or continuation on 1999 is I Wish You Would. But even there, it doesn't really sound like there's much room for a retread. It's not an emotional song. Style has the treacherous quality, but the situation she's talking about is concluded. We know that because of how she's marketing the album. And then finally, we arrive where I think the bolting impulse really comes to its first fruition, which is Reputation. And it's actually a very straightforward romantic album when you listen to it. It's almost a reunion with the Rule and the fairy tale obsessed girl of the past. She's trying to draw this straight line conclusion. This happened to me and I've ended up here, and I want to wear his initial on a chain around my neck, not because he owns me, because he really knows me. And all the songs about Joe are about conquering something. It's fear, it's anxiety, it's circumstances. And it doesn't really matter because they all end in, please don't ever become strangers, laugh I could recognize anywhere. She was trying to tell us that, it was sewn up. It was a done deal. We are finished. Right. But we have one outlier on that record that doesn't fit with the story and doesn't fit with the emotions of the narrator. Getaway Car. There's plenty of subliminal messaging about getting the hell out of a relationship all the way through Folklore and Evermore, and then on later songs like Ivy. But I think from Getaway Car basically until Midnight Rain, we have the bolter on ice, but she's there. She's lingering.
She's waiting in the wings, waiting to strike, waiting to leap. You know, you make a lot of compelling points. I have to tell you the truth. You make a lot of interesting points. Now my kind of tea about the issue of the bolter is she isn't. I feel like I've seen at least a lot of conversation about like, is the bolter, because it's written in third person, people talking about, is the bolter her, or is she narrating a story about a girl who happens to bolt? So is this about herself, or is this about a character she made up? My tea is that the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think she definitely knows she's bolted. And I think the bolter, the song, is kind of a culmination of her trying to examine why she has bolted in the past, why women bolt in general, really, why men take it so poorly when women do bolt. I also kind of think that she wants to be the bolter, because the core of the bolter is, it's so funny, and I have so much fun doing this all the time, and I love playing with men's hearts all the time. It's like the I did something bad character, essentially. Really,
And
that's
I
who the
don't
bolter
get
is.
heartbroken.
Right. She knows she's not really that girl. Deep down, she knows that is not her tea. I think that the bolter is like a playful, fun song about a made up girl or a character who she's using as kind of like a lens to examine her own past actions, rather than it being about, this is me and I am her. She can relate to the feeling of how there's escape in escaping, for sure, but I don't really think it's what defines her. I'm not going to nickname her the bolter. Let's put it that way. But I do think it is fun to analyze her own totally normal and human instances of running away from a situation, and why she personally has done it like everyone else has done it before. And I do think when she does do it, it bothers her. Like, she's like, why did I do that? Why did I do that to him? Why does this bother me? Why
And
am I
that's why
writing
she's
Midnight
so
Rain?
interested in it. That's why,
Exactly.
because it
Period.
makes no sense. And also, I
Yeah.
think the thing about being a bolter is, I think she is and she isn't the bolter. There's parts of her life
Right.
where that instinct has come up more than once. So there is some sort of like pattern with it. But I think also she actively resists it and would not choose it unless she absolutely had to. And that's why the bolter, I think, is like a fun interpretation of it, because she's like, why don't we try and see if we can come up with like something interesting and cute and romantic about this, because otherwise I'm feeling like I'm crazy. And I think that's a very natural human impulse, honestly, like to randomly just, we all have that thought every now and again, like, what if I just blow up my life? Taylor just happens to be like a protagonist living in a main character story, and she
Right.
does it. She like actually has followed through on it and blown up her life in many ways a few times, even though like she was supposed to, even though she was with Joe for so long and she suffered and she was a martyr, like she still, I think at the end of the day, bolted away from it. When she finally got out, she was like, oh my God, I'm fresh out the slammer. Like now all of a sudden everything's different. And it was that shock of switching from one to the other, from I'm trapped to I'm free, that I think maybe kind of prompted the Bolter song to come out of her. It's also the most Evermore song on Torture Poets. It should just be on Evermore, actually, to me.
That's very, very interesting for you to say that. I wonder if, because I had a playlist that I made, like Evermore. I made like an Evermore and out of the anthology. I wonder if I put that on there. I can't remember. But nonetheless, it's funny because I always kind of associate Evermore with Reputation in a really weird way. Like I can never define it when somebody asks me like, why is Evermore and Reputation related? But it's funny because I find that the Bolter has that just like perfect amount of Reputation in it, while still kind of sounding like a vocal Evermore song. So it's interesting that you say that, because I definitely agree.
You see how that works?
You see how that works?
Should we get into the songs? I feel like maybe we should start with the Bolter.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
You want to start with her?
Scroll down.
I think
to the bottom.
it also is written very folklorian in that like it kind of is about her and it isn't about her, and she's using the story of someone else, some fictional person, to have a little bit of a cathartic moment. By all accounts, she almost drowned when she was 6 in frigid water, and I can confirm she made a curious child, ever reviled by everyone except her own father. With a quite bewitching face, splendidly selfish, charmingly helpless, excellent fun till you get to know her. Madeline, what tea are you clocking in these lines?
You know, what's interesting about it, that these are the lines that I find are like the most far removed from who I think Taylor Swift is. I don't really think she's splendidly selfish. I don't think she's charmingly helpless. I don't think she's ever reviled by everyone except her own father. And it's interesting how she's kind of like setting up this woman and this idea and this character that she has in her head of somebody who is very beautiful, first of all, but also very cold. She's beautiful and she's cold. And these are, I mean, I would describe Taylor as beautiful, absolutely, but I wouldn't describe her ever, ever, ever,
Oh, she's
ever
warm.
as
Only
cold.
ever has been warm. Yeah.
Yeah. And just like the idea of her being reviled. I think she's felt reviled before, but she knows that she's not reviled by the entire
America's
world.
sweetheart.
America's
Hello.
sweetheart, et cetera, et cetera. So this is kind of like, to me, this is like setting up a separation of herself and this character. Or you could think of it another way where it's like, okay, this part of myself that wants to do this is what this part of me is like. This is what it looks like. This is my alter ego, and this is what she's like. It's kind of the way I think of it.
I feel that too. I think she is using a fictional narrative to explore an emotional theme or pattern in her life. The part here that I do feel like I can kind of see her in is the splendidly selfish and charmingly helpless. That I do kind of see her in that. In, Taylor's entire world revolves around her. She struggles when it is not about me. Being a pop star is to have your whole life be everyone interviewing you, asking you questions, like you deciding what songs you want to make, you going on tour, people screaming your name. There is an element to, I think, dating Taylor Swift that cannot be like interpreted as anything other than selfish, because she is also so driven by her career. She's not really willing to make concessions for that, nor should she be. But I think, when you're entering into a romantic relationship, that's one of the unique, specifically difficult things of dating someone like Taylor Swift. And charmingly helpless, well, pop stars, we often see them trapped as like prisoners in their lives. Like everything is glamorous and beautiful, but unfortunately, once you turn the fame valve on, it cannot be closed again. So she really can never be rescued from the perils of being famous. So I think those are two characteristics that in her later career, men may have encountered her with.
Interesting. So this is how it's another way that you could think of it as like, this is how men see her, which is kind of like a really fascinating thing to get into, especially if you're a woman. Like how men view you is completely different than how your girlfriends see you, even how your gay male friends see you. How men who are interested in dating you see you is completely separate from how the rest of the world sees you, and it's deranged.
It reminds me of the albatross, actually. That line, splendidly selfish, charmingly helpless. It reminds me of she's the albatross.
Right.
She's here to destroy you. She's here to protect you.
Yeah.
It really depends on how you're looking at it.
Yeah. Interesting. I feel like the thing about the Bolter is like, no matter what, no matter if she's doing a character, if it's her, if it's the girl from Reputation, if it's really Taylor, I feel like the Bolter is like the song that all the other songs are about. It like tells the stories of all of her exploits and all of the times that she's done this in the past. It tells the stories of these other songs like High Infidelity, like Getaway Car, like Midnight Rain. It's just like literally about the thing that she occasionally does and why she would do it.
And the fact that it's a character helps also to remind the listener that like this isn't her all the time. So I think she would agree that it is her and it isn't her. I also just love the motif and the feeling of frigid water falling through the ice, like that burst of cold and that gasp of fresh air. I really love that kind of going throughout as a vision of, it really helps make sense why, being the Bolter makes her feel alive. It feels horrible at first. You think that you might die, and then all of a sudden you're taking this like huge breath that you've never felt before.
And when she finds herself in situations where it feels like she's falling in love, or even worse, he's falling in love with her, to describe it as like her life flashing before her eyes, it's kind of like that thing that Sylvia Plath said about the figs. If I marry this guy, that's it. And my whole life is flashing before my eyes. Or my falling in love with him and getting married to him is like falling through the ice into the unknown icy waters underneath. And I might drown down there, and I don't know what's down there, and I don't know if I'm ever going to come back up and like be myself again. And then when she comes back up out of the ice, that's what it's like when she leaves, and she takes a big fat breath, and it's like, oh my God, it is so much safer and better to leave. You gotta leave before you get left. You see how that works?
There's something very EOAS coded about this as well, just in general. Like all her fucking lives flash before her eyes. It really reminds me of bygones will be bygones, eras fading into gray. Like at this point, I think Taylor really is, for Tortured Poets, reflecting on her life. And so much of Tortured Poets addresses it. Like when you think about it, we're coming up to a year and we really need to dive into it again, because it addresses so many different things. It's not just the Maddie Healy album. It's not just the Joe breakup album. It has fingers and tentacles in every part of the discography. And I think that's what makes the Bolter particularly, I think, both confusing and fascinating for people.
And you know what's so interesting about The Bolter is that because it's like puts its paws into all these different like eras of her life, I think it's so interesting that it shares an album with The Prophecy. And it's like a completely, you'd think that
Yes.
was a
No, you're
crazy
right.
song. It's
Madeline,
crazy that it shares an
two-headed
album
snake.
with, yeah, it's crazy because The Prophecy, she's on her hands and knees begging for a soulmate and for a real connection and for a real man who will stick around. And then that song sharing a record with a song like The Bolter, where she's going, hee hee, it'll all just blow up in the end anyway, so I may as well run away. That
Midnight
line of
Rain.
hers, yeah, Midnight
That's a
Rain.
Midnight Rain moment.
To me, they really share a heartbeat because it's like the same fear. In The Prophecy,
Yeah.
she talks about how she keeps thinking she's got lightning in a bottle, but it's gone again. And the entire song is really about how that experience of the lightning in a bottle going away, it's very painful. And it's like you can only go through it so many times.
And
It's
she
like
can't keep
she's
doing it
tired.
over and
Right.
over.
I don't want to do it anymore. It's not fun.
And The
I'm
Bolter is
straight up
about
not having
leaving
fun. Right. And having
before you
the time
get
of her
left.
life. She's having the
Mm-hmm.
time of her life. It's like
Bye.
it's almost like a yin yang sort of situation with The Prophecy and The Bolter, which I actually never noticed until I sat down to like really think about it. So, I mean, this is why you got to analyze the songs, girls. You got to get your paws in there.
This is
You
why
start
you need to
realizing,
have sister songs.
start
Then
realizing,
you realize.
yeah.
Then you realize. All right, the next part of the song. Then she runs like it's a race. Behind her back, her best friends laughed, and they nicknamed her the Bolter. Well, sure. I think that just helps further set up the distance, right?
It
Like,
does,
this is
yeah.
a character. It's not necessarily me.
Right.
And here we go to the chorus. Started with a kiss. Oh, we must stop meeting like this. But it always ends up with a town car speeding out the drive one evening. Ended with the slam of a door. Then he'll call her a whore. Wish he wouldn't be sore, but as she was leaving, it felt like breathing. All her lives flashed before her eyes. It feels like the time she fell through the ice, then came out alive. There's something very like Jackie Kennedy about this. I don't know why. There's like an old-timey,
it's very old Hollywood to me.
To it all. And she's obviously fascinated by that period of time.
Well, she thought she was a Kennedy for a hot second there. Don't forget the girl. If you want to, if you picture the girl in The Bolter dressing like Taylor was dressing when she was in, where was that, Cape Cod or wherever that was happening.
Madeline, that was a Bolter moment.
It was.
That was a Bolter moment.
Bolter behaviors, but like in a weird way, because like, yeah, she's with Connor Kennedy, but like that's the Bolter in full living sound and color.
Wouldn't anyone bolt?
Yeah, 100%.
From your 17-year-old in Crocs getting arrested outside the White House.
And that's none of our business. And that's none of our business. It's time to go. So yeah, very old Hollywood. I just like the melodic way that it kind of goes. It's very simple and it's very fun and it's very like cute and playful. And it's also very sad at the same time. Taylor is like one of the best artists at doing that thing where it's like the song is so sad, but she's like
melancholia.
And it's like, oh, it's very sad. But I love it.
I love the delivery of, but as she was leaving, it felt like breathing. And it's like these exits are life-giving. Leaving isn't a failure. It's a survival. I just love that moment. It's such a good one.
Yeah, I love it. I love the chorus. This is one of those songs that like when I'm not listening to it, I'm like, it's okay. But when I turn it on, I'm like, this is the best song ever. I love driving. I love putting the song on when I'm driving. It's the most amazing thing ever.
There is also something interesting about she keeps referencing this time when she fell through the ice, because that only happened once when she was a kid, right? It's like this is the extended metaphor, I think, that ties the whole like song together. Every departure, every bolting is at first like that trauma. It's dangerous, it's sudden, but she comes back up and she takes the breath. It's necessary. She survives, not in spite of running away, but because of it. It saves her in a way.
Well, it's also really interesting because like the time I almost drowned when I was a kid, I almost drowned. And I remember it still to this day. I still remember. It's one of my earliest memories. It was one of the scariest things that ever happened to me. So to compare.
So you weren't like, it feels like breathing. No. Actually, it feels like drowning.
So that's why it's like such a crazy but like very poignant metaphor, because it's like, you felt like falling in love with a dude or winding up in a situation where you're like might wind up married or like in an endgame situation was like you almost drowned. The scariest moment of your whole life. That's what you're equating it to. But again, because she knows how it goes. It's scary. It's like uncontrollable. That's how she feels about it. It's a narrative that she can't pilot. And who is she but the narrator? And she's always piloting this story. Well, sometimes you can't. And that's really what freaks her out.
Period. Say that. All right. I think we kind of covered the chorus. Should we move on to the second verse?
Yeah.
He was a cad, wanted her bad, just like any good trophy hunter, and she likes the way it tastes, taming a bear, making him care, watching him jump, then pulling him under. And at first blush, this is fate. When it's all roses, portrait poses, Central Park Lake, and tiny rowboats. What a charming Saturday. That's when she sees the littlest leaks down in the floorboard, and she just knows she must bolt.
Now that's poetry. This is Emily Dickinson. This is Shakespeare born again.
One crack and she's gone. That's literally the definition of getting the ick. Like he put his socks on in a way that I didn't like, and as all of a sudden I have to change my name.
Well, he was exposing himself from the beginning. I think probably my favorite part of this verse is the beginning when she's describing him. He's a cad, and she describes him as a trophy hunter. That's not a good thing. She's describing him in a very poor light. But meanwhile, she's like, I'll do it for the plot, which is exactly what she does. Her Taylor Swift. She'll do it for the plot. You knew he wasn't.
Can make the bad guys good for a weekend. I never trust a narcissist, but they love me.
Right,
you see how that works.
You see how that works.
But this also is her kind of building in a moral defense against, up and leaving someone. Just because they're like, I don't know, if you thought that they were a narcissist and they were selfish, why the hell did you get involved in the first place? But she likes it. She likes to tame the bear. Mm-hmm. She likes to make them care. And she then, devours them alive. Man-eater. She's the Black Widow.
It's also really interesting to think about like that in the context of like the album that it's on and like Torture Poets Department and what happened with Maddie and like thinking about I can fix him, no really I can, and her sort of proclivity to believe, and many women's proclivities to believe that like, oh, we can fix him. Like, yeah, he's a jack, but he won't be a to me. He's going to be different to me. So it's really interesting to see her flip it on its head and like totally flip it and be like, I'm just having fun anyway. And it's really not that big of a deal. Because in reality, the last time she did that, we know it was a big deal and she wasn't having fun.
She was going to die. It would make no difference. That's literally what happened to her last time.
Literally. So she's kind of, I think it's kind of fun to think of it as her like rewriting the story. Like again, the pilot in the narrative. I'm rewriting the story and I'm acting like I was having fun the whole time when I know the truth.
Who the hell is writing pop music like this? I love this line. That's when she sees the littlest leaks down in the floorboards and she just knows she must bolt. One crack, one flaw,
that's it. That's all it takes.
She's gone. She's not waiting for an explosion. She's not waiting for you to get sick of her. She's not waiting for you to even confront her. The metaphor of the leaking floorboard, I think, it's indicative of her instinctive fear of really getting emotionally sunk into something and really just rotting away and wasting your time because she's done it. That's the duality of the Bolter. The Bolter character has never stuck around long enough to know what it feels like, but our narrator, who has a little bit of remove, has. So she knows both the feeling of getting out before you get hurt and the instinctive fear of that emotional rot. She would rather disappear than sink.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the whole thing. You gotta leave before you get left. How many times can we say it? How many times can we say it in one episode?
It just has to be done. It has to be done. Mm-hmm. So let's move on to the bridge. She's been many places with men of many faces. I've been looking sad in all the nicest places. Can we just start there? First, they're off to the races, and she's laughing, drawing aces, but none of it is changing, that the chariot is waiting. Hearts are hers for the breaking. There's escape in escaping.
She's doing, I did something bad. I did something bad in a different font. It reminds me of
Dickinson.
Yeah.
Temily Dickinson.
Temily Dickinson. Emily Dicuptation. Emily.
I had no idea where you were going with that.
I tried to get there.
I love it.
This is the part. This bridge reminds me exactly of the second verse of I Did Something Bad. It's literally the second verse of I Did Something Bad, but just like slightly tweaked. So she's painting this picture of essentially a playgirl, if you will, someone who's running from commitment, someone who's running from real connections with people. But the thing is that there's like a certain depth to it. There's a certain depth to the whole song. It's not like it was when I Did Something Bad where I'm jet setting, I'm just playing with guys. It's not just hee, I like toying with men's minds, I like messing with them. She provides deeper insight into the entire thing. Hearts are hers for the breaking. There's escape in escaping. She says that this happens because I'm scared. Yeah, there's escape and escaping. There's escape in getting out of the situation before anything bad can happen to you, is essentially what she's saying. And the whole song is about how terrified she really is deep down. It's in the subtext. And I did something bad, Taylor.
That it's fun, but I'm terrified.
Exactly. Period.
And that's really what it is. Yeah, it's just, off to the races. She's implying that there's some excitement, some competition. You know, there might be a possibility that there's another person involved, or there might be a scenario in which this could end up with a win. But she's drawn the aces until she walks away. And it seems like she's walking away as she has the aces. I think that's what's so interesting about the Bolter, is that I'm really just not going to allow myself to get to anything that's not a complete slam dunk.
Right.
And she knows that chariot is always waiting for her regardless. So, you know, what is it? Win while you're losing? No.
Wait a second. You
quit while you're winning.
Quit while you're ahead. Quit while you're
not
ahead.
Win while you're losing. Amazing. Quit
win while you're losing, boys.
Ahead.
Those
Leaving
American
is
idioms.
both an addiction and a freedom. That last line really is, I think, the Bolter's like manifesto. There's escape
manifesto.
and escaping. And it's like there is escape and escaping, but you're also escaping from yourself, which is something you can never run from.
You can never get away from you. The getaway car, there's never going to be a getaway car that pulls up and says, let's get away from Taylor Swift. I hate to tell you that. It can't be done.
No way.
No way.
There will be a shipping boat or a massive cruise liner that shows up and says, I need to be with you all the time. Get on this boat and never leave.
Yes.
Well, I think we sorted the Bolter there. Should we move on to Getaway Car?
Getaway Car. It's your turn. You little freak.
No, nothing good starts in a getaway car. It was the best of times. It was the worst of crimes. I struck a match and blew your mind, but I didn't mean it, and you didn't see it. The ties were black, the lies were white, in shades of gray and candlelight. I wanted to leave him. I needed a reason. X marks the spot where we fell apart. He poisoned the well. I was lying to myself. I knew it from the first. Old-fashioned, we were cursed. We never had a shotgun. Shot in the dark.
Now, here's the tea about this. Here's the whole tea about the whole getaway car. I had this revelation. That Getaway Car is the same story as what happened in Back to December. It literally is. That's not an opinion. That just is fact. Taylor wanted to leave Taylor Lautner and not call him on his birthday because she met John Mayer. I
wanted to leave him. I needed a reason.
And well, boys and girls, she had a reason. And let's just say it didn't go the way she thought it was going to go. But many such cases, by the way. But in any event, then Taylor wanted to leave Tom because she met Joe Alwyn and had a connection with him. It's boltception. You see how that works? It's bolting. It's bolting to bolt to bolt. But she says, I needed to leave him, and I wanted to leave him, and I needed a reason. It's interesting how when she bolts, it is 9 times out of 10 to pursue something that she thinks is more interesting. Period. Like it's never to pursue being single. That's not what we're pursuing. We're pursuing another romantic entanglement, something that can give her the opposite of whatever it is she was trying to run away from. Exactly. And it happens time and time again. High Infidelity. Have you ever heard that song? Do you really want to know where I was on April 29th? I don't regret it. I play it all the time. The air goes crisp with fall, and I spin High Infidelity like you wouldn't believe it.
She loves her bleep bloop. She loves a bleep and a bloop. I think I struck a match and blew your mind. There is something so condescending about Getaway Car. Like you were just a dumb guy. And when you know that it's about Tom Hiddleston, like it just makes it so much more funny. But I didn't mean it and you didn't see it. This is a classic Taylor Swift psycho move. She's both deflecting and taking responsibility at the same time. She's like, it's my fault, but it's more your fault. She's not innocent, but she's also misunderstood. And I think that says something about the Bolter in her, that emotional impulsivity, that switch that clicks in her head where she goes, whoop, I gotta go. She expects that other people should see that too. She thinks it's so obvious. Well, if it is, then how do we keep getting in these situations?
Well, see, now here's the thing. She always acts like, especially in the song, this is just something I do. But what's interesting about Getaway Car is it's on Reputation. So kind of like, in my opinion, she's kind of doing like a little bit of a caricature of herself. I mean, it is true, and it did really happen, and these are her real feelings. But it's kind of, it has that same thread that kind of ties together, like, what you made me do, don't blame me, I did something bad. And it's sort of doing a lot of the same thing that she does in The Bolter, where she talks about her bolting, like, come on, man, you knew this was going to happen. It's me. So she frames it like, think about the situation we were in when you first met me, when I was bolting, mind you. And she acts like, you know that this is who I am, and this is what I do. You should have known that I would be the first one to leave, because leaving is just what I got to do. You got to leave before you get left. Remember? But for the sake of the song, For the sake of the particular metaphor she was using of a getaway car and robbing a bank and being Bonnie and Clyde, it works in the song to use this kind of like, this is really who I am. And again, because it's on Reputation, it kind of lends itself to this particular character that she's having kind of like a lot of fun playing on the record. And I think Reputation, the thing about it is that it's not just like a total caricature and none of it is true and she's doing a total persona. It's the truth filtered through layers of like persona. And that's all it is. So Getaway Car is true, but this like, come on, you know who I am. This is what I do. It's like, I mean,
but also things, I think, you know, it's interesting because I think I've started to evolve my way of thinking about Taylor's songs as well, because sometimes I'm like, that doesn't feel like who you were at this moment, and that doesn't reflect XYZ about who you are now. I'm kind of trying to look a little bit more at songs as like little time capsules. And it's like in that moment where she was getaway carring, I think this was very serious and very true. I don't think that she was that it's been exaggerated in the past. Of course, it's been manipulated to tell a story, but the ties were black, the lies were white, and shades of gray and candlelight. We know that she's trying to conjure up the image of the Met Gala here, right? Like, that's where she is, that's where they met. And there's a moral confusion. There's no clear truths here. There's only layers of like things that could be, things that should be, things that other people have told her are true, because she's really trying to recover and bounce back from the very worst thing that's ever happened to her. She's cut off all her hair. She's blonde. Like, for all intents and purposes, she's a different person here. And I think this is just the further degradation of her view of love. She's like, okay, well, you know, sometimes things are true, sometimes things are not, sometimes things are permanent, sometimes things are for a minute. And I don't feel like I need to be completely forthcoming with people, because what are the fucking rules? Nothing makes sense anymore.
And I think that that's a really interesting observation, because that's really true, not just for Taylor in her 1989 era, but also for anybody who's in their early 20s. That is literally nothing. What is the rules? Are there any rules? What am I supposed to do? I'm going to cut off all my hair. I'm going to bleach my hair. I'm going to do something.
You make them for yourself.
Right. I never thought I would do this. I never thought that I would do something like this to somebody. And then the next thing you know, you're doing it, because it's like, oh, people are actually a lot more complex. And it's also interesting to think about it like in terms of coming out of the era where she had to be the good girl all the time and always do the right thing and like always kind
America's
of be
sweetheart,
always kind of like be the spurned person. Getaway Car, and it's similar to Back to December in the same way, because it's like I'm admitting that I did something wrong, but in Getaway Car, it's not the same kind of like I feel so bad. It's more like, I mean, come on, you knew I was gonna do this. I don't feel.
You know
bad.
what's? I had a visual really pop into my mind when you were saying that, the difference between Taylor in her early 20s and in her late 20s. And it was the two most recent Met Gala looks, like that America's Sweetheart dress with the big bow that she's buried in at the beginning of Look What You Made Me Do, versus that like reptilian snake skin dress where she looks pretty much unrecognizable to anyone that has ever known or loved Taylor Swift. That is a really good, I think, visual for what Getaway Car is.
Yes, that's actually a really good point. I mean, it may be the mess. It's mess, but it's a mess that we have to accept, because it's a mess for the plot. And she was dancing in that thing. And you know who was impressed by that thing? Was Tom Hiddleston. She was wearing it.
He said, I love your gladiator heels.
She's wearing the hell out of them.
That black lipstick. Oh,
yeah. Oh, mama.
It's doing something for me. Okay, so X marks the spot where we fell apart. He poisoned the wells, lying to myself. I knew it from the first old fashioned. We were cursed. We never had a shotgun shot in the dark. Now, you see, this is where, you know, but I didn't mean it and you didn't see it. If you knew they were cursed, Miss Diva, you didn't want to let on. No, she didn't.
No, it's like I always think whenever, it's so funny because there's so much pictorial evidence of this entire song occurring. When she talks about the old fashioned, I see this image in her head, her sipping the drink and he's kissing her hand. I see it in my head as clear as day.
In her eyes, you can see that she's thinking,
I gotta get out of here.
A shotgun shot in the dark. She's thinking midnight rain. It's
he wanted to ride, I would make my own name.
So the chorus, you were driving the getaway car. We were flying, but we'd never get far. More Bolter chariot imagery. We love to see it. Don't pretend it's such a mystery. Think about the place where you first met me. In a getaway car.
Oh, they never get far.
They don't.
Nothing good starts in a getaway car. And what's funny is she keeps getting in. That's the crazy part. Nothing good starts in a getaway car. And she's like, I love the getaway car. I can't wait for the town car to show up.
Line it up, baby. Because the chariot's always waiting. The chariot is always waiting.
Always.
And I think I think she has that in her mind no matter what relationship she's in. And that's a healthy thing to keep in your mind, that you can get out of it whenever you want. But I think, you know, sometimes it's there just as like an insurance thing. She's like, yeah, I know I can bolt if I need to. And then when it starts to get bad, suddenly the chariot starts glowing. Suddenly the chariot is glistening. Suddenly
it's
she's
like
saying,
the Cinderella pumpkin.
It calls.
Midnight.
It beckons.
It's midnight.
It's midnight rain, some might say.
So I didn't even think about that when I said that. Oh, wow. You
there
see how that
go.
works? Yeah.
You see. I really don't have much to say about the chorus other than that. Do you think it's pretty self-explanatory?
It's pretty self-explanatory.
It was the great escape, the prison break, the light of freedom on my face, but you weren't thinking, and I was just drinking.
Again, picture in my mind.
While he was running after us, this is the Roman holiday part to me. While he was running after us, I was screaming, go, go, go. But with three of us, honey, it's a sideshow, and a circus ain't a love story, and now we're both sorry. And this is where Calvin Harris enters the chat.
Oh, this is also where she does her Canadian accent for no reason. Does anybody know why she does that? I guess because to rhyme it. I guess. Sorry, story, sorry. It makes sense. But every time I was doing it,
you can't say love story. Yeah. So
the Canadian leaped. The Canadian leaped. In any event, this is when Calvin Harris shows up. Well, Calvin Harris poisoned the well as well. I mean, there's no potable drinking water. So we got to get the hell out of here.
Not around that.
No, man. Not around
Adam?
that, man. Absolutely not. No. Adam?
Stinky man. We're not interested. The ex is chasing them here. He's literally coming after the getaway car. And that, again, reminds me, I was in a relationship that I couldn't claw my way out of. He's taking car doors off their hinges. I feel as though he didn't give up without a fight.
No, I definitely think I think he was like, he really thought, you know, when somebody thinks like, I'm madly in love with you and like, you're my whole thing. But then you think about high infidelity and she's like, you know, the slowest way, there's many different ways to kill the one you love. The slowest way is never loving them enough. So Taylor apparently felt like he didn't actually love her as much as he thought he did, but he really thought he did. That can happen. Where you think like, this is my end game and I can't believe she's dipping on me and getaway carring on me. But it's like Taylor knew, like, this isn't meant to be and this isn't working.
You turned me into an idea of sorts.
Many such cases.
See how Chloe Sam comes up in every video.
The web connects us all. Seriously.
All right, so then we get into another chorus, and then we have the bridge. We were jet set, Bonnie and Clyde, until I switched to the other side. It's no surprise I turned you in, because us traders never win. I'm in the getaway car, I left in the motel bar, put the money in the bag, and I stole the keys. That was the last time you ever saw me. This is like self-explanatory to me.
Yeah, no, we don't need to dissect that. She thought, you know, Bonnie and Clyde, a nice little reference. It's very clear. I like when she says, us traders never win. I think that's such an interesting thing. And I'm wondering how much she really like meant it or just thought that it sounded good or it sounded cool, because it's actually like a really sad thing to say. Us traders never win. And there's something about it, like in the context of like the Bolter and like the prophecy and like this belief that she's never going to find the one. And then to say us traders never win. It's like, do you know what I'm saying? Like it's.
Do you know what that reminds me of? Don't look at me, got a girl at home, etc., etc. There's that phrase that is, how you get him is how you'll lose him, which is referring to people who go out of their way to steal someone's man. Or I think you can also apply that to if you cheat on someone and that's how you get into a relationship with them. Like if you're cheating on your partner to get in a new relationship, how do you expect this is going to end? Because he's a traitor too. Like you both knew that you shouldn't be doing that. And there was another person that you had an obligation to, you know, sever ties with. There really is no excuse for that. So that's my interpretation of why they're both traitors here. Because they both, and why she's also like, you should have known. Like I was in this long relationship that I was very unhappy in, and you suddenly arrived and I was going to Rome with you and meeting your grandma. Like, are you dumb? Do you think that's normal behavior?
No, for a split second, because you said Roman holiday earlier, I was like, wait, does that happen in Roman holiday? But I remember it happened in real life.
It should.
It happened in real life. I forgot that is literally a Roman holiday.
I'm on the beach and I'm on a stony beach in flip-flops with Granny.
It never should have happened. Let's know that. And that was 2 weeks in. It's kind of like,
It's no surprise.
No, it's no surprise.
I
No,
turned
he went
you
to
in.
Selena Gomez, etc., etc. Of all the times to be a fly on the wall, I wanted to be a fly on the wall in that private jet when they were flying to Rome. Oh, I need to be on the wall. I need to know what's going on.
I want to hear the conversations.
Oh, me too.
I
What
need
are
to
you
know
guys
what Tom
talking about?
Hiddleston knows. I need to know, and he has class act.
Nobody can take that away from him.
Smacked him down, and he still said, "I had the time of my life fighting dragons with you."
Well, I think he did, though. I think he was like,
He
I think
did.
he was taken
He
on the
loved
ride
it.
of his life. He had the time of his life.
It was
And
never
I'm happy
going to
for
be
him.
more interesting than that for this
No.
boring man.
I'm happy for him. I really am.
Well, I think that kind of wraps up Getaway Car for us.
Period.
Let's get into Midnight Rain.
The girl.
Take it away, Madeline.
I think Midnight Rain is kind of the freaky girl. Of these three songs, and frankly, of all the Bolting songs that we have to think about in the discography, Midnight Rain is the freaky girl. She's just
nothing like it.
There's no other song in the discography like Midnight Rain, and that's kind of like why I really started to like it. When the album first came out, I wasn't so sure about her. But as time went on, I realized she's a very, very special song, and there's nobody else like her, and we have to cheer for that. But what I really like about Midnight Rain is that there's really nothing to surmise because she's very, very clear about why she felt like she had to get out of this particular situation. She says it quite plainly. He was sunshine. I was Midnight Rain. He wanted it comfortable. I wanted that pain. He wanted a bride. I was making my own name, chasing that fame. He stayed the same. But all of me changed like midnight. So point blank, another way to read that if you want to break it all down.
You see how she can do Temily Dickinson, and now she's doing T.E. Cummings here. She's doing short, she's doing brief, she's doing vague.
You see that? Do you see how that works?
See how that works? I feel like also I'm definitely more convinced still. I always thought the song was about Tom Hiddleston, and I really do think it still is. Because I do think retrofitting Midnights to be entirely about Maddie Healy and Joe only, I think is boring. And I also think is not true. There are other areas, would have, could have, should have, that are explored there, dear reader, that do fit like the concept of being awake in the middle of the night and ruminating on your past mistakes. And I think Tom Hiddleston was one of those things that happened so briefly and so much happened in sequence afterwards that she didn't really get a chance to reflect on why that didn't work. All she got to do was say, I was in the getaway car, girl, I had to leave. This one is a little bit more like, okay, I hate my relationship. I hate my life with Joe. So every night I'm staying up, I'm an insomniac. I'm not talking to anyone, and I'm just thinking about things that happened. And this was the last thing that happened before she got into a relationship with Joe. And I think she literally erased it from her mind. And this to me seems like it's coming up again almost in like flashes. It's like a dream sequence. Like I'm getting these like memory recalls of things happening. And that's why the song is so poetic, but also empty in a way. Like there's a lot of space between the images. And I think it says it all. I think it really, the chorus strikes to me as being about someone who was naive and optimistic. And that really is the vibe that I got from Tom Hiddleston. He's like a golden retriever.
And another way to think
Joe
of it, I
is
guess,
not sunshine. I don't think anyone would ever describe him as sunshine.
Well,
Your
Taylor
Cascade
never
Ocean Waves Blue.
Yeah, she never describes him like that either. So I think Tom is a really, really good candidate. If we're gonna have one person that the song is about, he's a really, really good candidate. And especially because in the first verse, she's describing the situation and reputation. My town was a wasteland, full of cages, full of fences, pageant queens, and great pretenders. But to some, it was paradise.
It was paradise.
What do you think we're talking about? We're talking about reputation. So we're setting the scene. The curtains are opening. We are in reputation era. Or not even. We're in 2016 Bleachella era. Bleachella is a really good place
Jumping off things in the ocean. Yeah. We're at the 4th of July party. Hello.
Well, you know what I love the most about this song is, to me, it's one of the songs on Midnights that most truly represents the Midnights sort of thesis.
This and Dear Reader to me are like midnight songs.
And I love the production, and I love when she says, my boy was a montage, and there's that, all the production, like glittering sounds.
For me, it came like a postcard. Give it to me.
No, the entire song. No, I love Midnight Rain so much. We need it acoustic on the piano imminently, and I'm not messing around about that.
Do you remember when everyone in the Discord or somewhere was trying to decipher like between us who was Sunshine and who was Midnight Rain, and then they had to learn that we are both Midnight Rain? They were saying Madeline Sunshine.
That's what they don't get. They were saying Madeline Sunshine.
If anything, I feel like I'm a better candidate for Sunshine than you are.
That's what they don't get. That's what they don't get, because I feel like they're just kind of like reading it as like the thing is like, I'm like the goth girl, or like I'm like the, you know, ooh, da, 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 and like Zach is so much like harder than I am, but it's like it's more complex
It's
than
actually
that.
the opposite. It actually is the opposite.
No, I'm
Don't
psychotic.
activate that snapping turtle.
No,
Don't
I'm
activate
psychotic.
her. She's very calm and polite until you push her, and when you push, the bite.
No,
See, I'm just always biting.
Well,
so
here's
it's
the
not a
thing.
surprise.
And my words shoot to kill when I'm mad, baby. I have a lot of regrets about that.
They do. That is so true, Queen.
Period.
Well, I love the bridge in Midnight Rain, and it is so interesting to me. Damn it, I wish I could go to the Eras tour and hear this song again. I guess sometimes we all get just what we wanted, and he never thinks of me except when I'm on TV.
It makes me crazy. It makes me psycho. And he never thinks of me.
He never thinks of me. And the thing is, you know why he never thinks of her? Because the Tom Hiddleston thing was so brief and it was over so long ago. Like, I'm sure he doesn't actively be like, yeah, I in hindsight, he's probably like, yes, I should have known. I should have known. It was clear. I'm dumb. Oops. And I'm sure he does occasionally see her on TV and go, huh, remember when I dated? And she's changed and evolved so much since they dated. Imagine him seeing her on TV during Eras and being like, oh my God, like she was my girl at one point.
I fumbled it. I fumbled it, boys.
Fumbled that bag.
But what I
guess sometimes we all get some kind of haunted.
Right. This is what I love, is like this idea of her. By the way, she's supposed to be getting married any day now. She thinks in her head, and she's sitting there going,
for that ring.
I guess. And what I like about, I guess sometimes we all get just what we wanted, is she's not saying that like, yippee.
No.
She's saying it like, be careful what you wish for.
And I'm still empty and dead inside.
So I got this, like, you know, she went from Tom Hiddleston, which was very, very over publicized. Like, the thing about Hiddleswift is it was Tavis levels of publicized, but it was like a train wreck instead of being like, it was a train wreck.
I feel like Taylor's trying to avoid that current overexposure right now with Travis by going ghost. With Tom, she was like, get the camera. Dead. Where's the camera?
Yeah. So then when she switched to be with Joe, who was much more interested in a quieter life and not being that way, she was like, I got exactly what I wanted. And I got to be bejeweled. I need to be bejeweled. Best believe I'm still bejeweled. Like, she was going cuckoo, cuckoo, cuckoo. So
I got what I wanted, but a diamond's got to shine. You see how those two things can be related?
Yeah.
Well, I think that we just cooked in ways that, you know, have not been cooked before.
No, and you know what? I love a fruitful sister song. Sometimes you get a sister song and you sit there and you think to yourself, scraping the barrel. But this is a really fruitful. I honestly think, even separate from a sister songs, we could do like a whole nother episode on just like her relationship to the idea of leaving, to like her relationship with abandonment and love and how it's supposed to work and what are the rules. Like, that's a whole nother separate episode, kids.
You could even segment it by era. Like, you could just go like, what was Taylor's red approach to relationships?
We could do whatever the heck we want.
I could do 10 episodes on that.
They can't stop us.
Can't stop, won't stop moving. Well, if you enjoyed this episode of Sister Songs, patreon.com/riftologist for more weekly bonus episodes of Evolution of a Snake. And of course, evolutionofasnake.com for tickets to our tour. Leave some requests in the comments below and let us know what you would like to hear a sister song of next. We stole the Bolter and Getaway Car from you guys and threw in a little Midnight Rain. So let us know, what combos do you want to see go crazy? Don't go too crazy. Don't be doing Me and Only the Young, because that's not happening.
Nice try.
Nice try. With love, goodbye.